So by the time that this video rolls out, the option to install an update on every current Nintendo Switch console will greet every user first turning on their system, like those Windows downloads you keep delaying that restart for the next day. And look, obviously, this update serves as one of the last major changes to the original Nintendo Switch consoles to coincide with some of the Switch 2 features like that new game sharing shit that's actually really cool. But with this new update, outside of Donkey Kong's player icon getting its much deserved Botox shots to look as good as its new game design, this software upgrade, in my opinion, is a really evolutionary step not only for Nintendo but really for just the whole new age of gaming that we're inevitably entering as Nintendo implements this new virtual game card feature that they fairly recently teased with the Nintendo Switch 2 showcase. This virtual game card system works as its name intends it to be. It takes your already prevalent digital download library, except now aiming to turn these games into having similar usages to physical game Switch cartridges, allowing you to share single games across a Nintendo family account or even just one console of your choosing. But you also have that along with the new virtual eject and inject UI designs because, you know, why the hell not? We thought we'd have Nuketown in 2025, but hardware design obviously had much more monumental plans. But with these virtual game cards, I personally don't feel strongly either way about them. I mean, the loopholes for game sharing that ceased to exist following this virtual game card update being gone, I mean, that does suck for the people that were able to exploit that. I mean, I feel sorry for you guys. But I just think that in the grand scheme of Nintendo's plans and really the whole gaming industry, now that we see Nintendo following suit in this, is just the whole new push of digital library games that we've long now known would put the stake in the heart of physical games and just outright kill them from the entire gaming industry. But I just think it hits so much harder when we see, you know, big manufacturers like Nintendo, who was one of the last major players to push physical games even in the age of the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series consoles having their diskless drive consoles, and even some games up to this year that still get physical cartridge releases. The current era where physical gaming cannot be more on a decline. Obviously, the physical games are still technically here and around, but players have now been mentally just beaten to the point where they accept that they're buying an empty box with a sheet of paper inside that has an elongated damn hex code inside. Even with the Switch 2, we know that most of those cartridges are just going to be accessed to download the game onto your system. You just still need the cartridge to still access it even after you download it, which is the most closest thing we have to physical games going forward. A good idea in theory, just not the most practical one in the world because of gaming's foundation built on having offline access to every game in the past generations. So just cutting off that convenience of what physical games used to bring to this entire hobby really just highlights what people feel like we're missing as a society, and that's just the idea, or at least the illusion, of owning our shit. So just having another thing that most of us grew up feeling like we actually own, in some sense being video games, with your access now being determined if you decide to pay your Spectrum bill that month, is really just a tough pill to swallow for a lot of players. But as I try to put the idea of digital games into perspective, I will say that even when physical games were prevalent, we never actually owned those titles because the terms and conditions and privacy policies that we've mindlessly accepted over the years have firmly laid out the foundation that we don't actually own these games, just the license to play them, which really, it makes sense because if I had the rights to own Paper Mario Sticker Star, that shit would not exist. But even though we've never actually owned what we bought, the idea of possibly never having access to a game that you've downloaded after a while has never been more of a prevalent thing than in the last 2 decades, since we've seen time and time again as publishers, developers, or whatever the hell it may be, have revoked games countless times for failing to meet their expected potential when it comes to sales and just overall money. Take that failed online Avengers game that's basically a fossil in overall gaming history at this point, but it didn't even see 2 years into its lifespan because of obviously lack of player interest and failing to make decent revenue, which, don't get me wrong, that game was ass, like I know ass when I see it, but it still had a small audience of players that would have enjoyed having some sort of offline mode or some other way to enjoy the game after it got delisted from all storefronts. And even though the Avengers was an online game that even if you had the physical version, it wouldn't make a difference as to your access to the title after they decided to stop supporting it, the same principle applies to even the games that do have physical versions you can still play, like all the Marvel Activision titles from the yesteryears that just got removed from most storefronts online. The reason for those games getting online delistings is an entirely different side of the whole lack of support coin that gamers have the possibility of enduring, and that's just with the publishers or game distributor platforms just ceasing to exist before the game can make a transition to some other platform to get the game available online. And I think the most infamous case for something as severe as this happening for a wide range of games is the 2006 DRM storefront games for Windows Live service that got defunct in around 2014, 2015, and just completely shitted on a bunch of new games that some you still just have no access to officially in this day and age. And even though specific online platforms are all the rage nowadays within gaming, as every publisher has their own app launchers and marketplaces that have their own specific benefits for maybe their own games, it still isn't put past a lot of players to look at some of the biggest gaming services in the world, like the Xbox Game Pass right now, and just think what would happen if something were to happen to this service, or if they decided to shut it down. How would some of those Xbox Game Pass exclusives, like all those indie developed games that don't have physical versions yet, how would they be able to survive just this apocalypse of just some that they probably don't have that much say over? The thought of what would happen if the developer decided to remove access to the game, or at least access to playing it because of the online services ceasing to exist, that has just plagued at least the back of everyone's mind when it comes to just downloading from all the growing horror stories of how gaming is being dealt with over the internet. Because at the end of the day, players, they just want access to their games no matter what bullshit the developer team or the publisher might have to go through in their whole, corporate negotiations and whatnot, because it's just a need that's been built off the whole, like I said, foundation of what gaming used to be, to where you didn't have to depend on an internet connection or even just downloading a game when you first got it, compared to the age that we're in right now. But harping about the complaints of the digital world is pretty much fruitless nowadays, since most of us are using this video as a distraction as we have a download or a game update in the background, because we just gotta face the facts here. It is so much easier for both the developers and on the gamer side of things to just have downloads in digital games compared to the physical versions of what the modern titles look like nowadays, and it's not even close when you compare to how games were made in past generations and how they're being made right now into the future. For the developers or people that actually make the games nowadays, it's easy for practically anyone to just upload a game build to all of the various online platforms, and even in that same motion, get their game out to a wide range of players, to which game distribution in the height of physical games was much different and had much more of an upfront cost, since you had to pay for, the cartridge or the CD, the plastic casing that it came in, the negotiations with the brick and mortar retailers, all those plastic cutouts that every gaming aisle used to have at some point. And if the game is popular enough to warrant a physical version in the game aisle, you still do have that option in this modern time, but you just can't argue with the convenience and less price costing of just having a digital download and putting it up from the comfort of your own studio or home. But then when you look on the gamer side of things and how gaming trends have shaped how people even approach buying games outright, if they do at all, barely anyone goes out for the shit they really need unless it's for groceries and for work. So finding a game to download and then having it download while you leave the house, and then you come back to a fully installed game just right there on your couch, instead of having to go out of your way to find a GameStop that you might not even be able to find with all the damn closings nowadays. Buy the game, come home, likely waste more gas, is much more of a less convenient thing than the former, just because of how easy it is to download from, like I said, the comfort of your own home. So with that digital access, having a game at launch, or at least whenever you decide that you're ready to play a game, will never really be a problem. But also with the whole digital library of things, it really just cuts out the whole middleman of pointless download codes that you find in the physical versions of most games, since these titles nowadays are just 100 gigabytes minimum. Like, they're big as fuck now. Unanimously, the gaming industry and players alike knew that we were going down a less physical managed pathway when we saw that Grand Theft Auto 5's PC physical edition that came out in 2015 had 7 installed discs just to install the base version of that game that was on like 60 gigabytes. A time also where disk drives on PC builds were starting to become obsolete and players just didn't have them on their PC rigs anymore. So obviously the PC platform and their physical editions were the main and really the first candidate to go when it came to just physical versions of these big ass games just going away. However, when it comes to the consoles, in contrast, most players have associated buying these expensive pieces of hardware with having tangible discs that they can have to really complete that whole experience. So for the most part, every other platform has tried their best to keep that whole idea intact of at least having a game case with something inside of it. But obviously, going forward on all sides of the gaming battlefield, most of these physical editions are just going to be access to downloads to reduce the financial waste of having a damn 7-disc install for most of these games. And hell, even if you do decide to walk the path of a digital-only lifestyle, at least your thoughts won't be without good reasoning, because you could look at the side of things and just how physical games just take up too much space. Maybe in your living abode, some players never care to own that extra plastic that comes with the game disc and whatnot. You could look at the way that the gaming industry is going and its huge shift on live service-based gaming and having the focus on always changing game worlds. Of course, all the Fortnite clones have opened Pandora's box of just all the new ways of monetization in gaming, but even single-player experiences are being affected by this new shift, because EA's next skate game is going to be an online-only experience even in its single-player modes, just because they want to capitalize on, like I said, the always changing gaming world and always changing microtransactions, let's be real. Some regions even take the cost of producing physical games into consideration, as they make the physical versions much more expensive compared to the digital version of that same game. So, you know, there's even that happening. But I will say though that I think that no matter what side of gaming you're on, whether you like having physical versions, no matter what it is, or even just going full digital, we could all agree that we just want the option of the physical games just for those that want to have a tangible option for whatever preservation reason that may be, that we're lacking a lot of in the current era of gaming that's only going to get worse as time really just goes on. Luckily though, we do have passionate gamers that are doing their best to get their voices heard and keep these games intact in this whole digital world that we're living in, with things like the Stop Killing Games Act that aims to give games an offline mode even if the developer decides to abandon a project or a title going forward. The Video Game History Foundation is always trying to do something to preserve the memories of gaming. Just recently they opened a digital library that has a lot of lost media that we've seen a lot of in the medium over the past decades. Even GOG has their own preservation service now, but if all fails, you will still always have the good old reliable method of just illegal piracy, which, like anything else in the world, there's always a last resort criminal activity equivalent. But even still, the cold truth about it all is that digital games are pretty much the norm now, and physical games are on the way out the door, and for the most part have really been out the door for their practical usages for the last generation plus, even some years before that. And unless our technology and game compression just reaches a whole new evolutionary stage to where we can have these big ass games compressed to like 10 gigabytes or something, then that's just going to be the case for the foreseeable future. And there's going to be a day where physical games are just not going to be there anymore, at least, and not any more than what it is right now, where the Nintendo Switch 2 game cards are just going to be access to downloads, which honestly, while it isn't the worst case scenario, it still isn't good for anyone that doesn't full-heartedly trust these companies to keep these games or the hardware that we're running them on in full service for the foreseeable future. And that's all that I got for today, man. If you enjoyed, leave a like on the video, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.